The Silk Road, a pathway of trade and cultural exchange. The Silk Road stands as one of the most remarkable networks in human history, a vast web of trade routes that connected the East and West for centuries. It was not a single road but a complex system of pathways stretching across continents, linking the great civilizations of China, India, Persia, Arabia, and the Mediterranean. Through these routes flowed not only silk but also spices, precious metals, ideas, religions, and technologies, weaving together the destinies of distant peoples. The Silk Road was more than a commercial highway, it was a bridge between cultures, fostering exchanges that shaped the course of history. The origins of the Silk Road can be traced back to the Han Dynasty in China, when Emperor Wu sent the explorer Zhang Qian westward to forge alliances against nomadic tribes. Zhang Qian's journeys revealed the potential for trade between China and Central Asia, laying the groundwork for what would become a thriving exchange network. By the time of the Roman Empire, Chinese silk had become a highly sought-after luxury in the West, symbolizing wealth and status. The demand for silk, along with other exotic goods, fueled the growth of these routes, encouraging merchants, pilgrims, and adventurers to traverse vast and often perilous landscapes. Trade was the lifeblood of the Silk Road, but its impact extended far beyond commerce. Caravans carried not only goods but also knowledge, spreading innovations such as papermaking, gunpowder, and the compass from east to west. Similarly, glassmaking, weaving techniques, and architectural styles traveled in the opposite direction, enriching the cultures they touched. The transmission of Buddhism from India to China, and later to Korea and Japan, was facilitated by these routes, as monks and scholars journeyed alongside traders, establishing monasteries and translating sacred texts. The Silk Road also became a melting pot of religions, philosophies, and artistic traditions. In the bustling markets of Samarkand and Bokhara, Zoroastrians, Buddhists, Christians, and Muslims mingled, exchanging not only goods but also beliefs. The spread of Islam across Central Asia was deeply intertwined with the Silk Road, as Muslim merchants and Sufi missionaries traveled along its paths, leaving behind mosques, madrasas, and a lasting cultural legacy. Meanwhile, in the oasis towns of the Taklamakan Desert, Buddhist art flourished, blending Indian, Greek, and Persian influences into a unique visual language. The decline of the Silk Road was gradual, shaped by shifting political landscapes and the rise of maritime trade. The Mongol Empire briefly revitalized the routes under the Pax Mongolica, ensuring safe passage for travelers like Marco Polo. However, the Black Death, the fragmentation of the Mongol Empire, and the growing dominance of European sea routes eventually diminished the overland trade. Yet, the legacy of the Silk Road endured, leaving an indelible mark on the cultures it connected. Today, the spirit of the Silk Road lives on in the shared heritage of the nations it once linked. Modern initiatives like China's Belt and Road Initiative seek to revive these ancient connections, emphasizing trade, infrastructure, and cultural exchange. The Silk Road remains a testament to humanity's enduring desire to explore, communicate, and transcend boundaries, proving that even the most distant civilizations can find common ground through the exchange of goods and ideas. The influence of the Silk Road on cultural exchanges between East and West. The Silk Road, an ancient network of trade routes that connected the East and West, played a pivotal role in shaping the cultural, economic, and political landscapes of Eurasia. Stretching from China to the Mediterranean, this vast web of pathways facilitated not only the exchange of goods such as silk, spices, and precious metals but also the transmission of ideas, religions, technologies, and artistic traditions. The cultural interactions that occurred along the Silk Road were profound, leaving a lasting legacy that continues to influence the modern world. One of the most significant impacts of the Silk Road was the spread of religious beliefs across continents. Buddhism, which originated in India, traveled along these routes to Central Asia, China, and beyond. Monks and pilgrims journeyed alongside merchants, carrying sacred texts and establishing monasteries in distant lands. The famous Chinese monk Xuanzang, for instance, embarked on a perilous journey to India in the 7th century to retrieve Buddhist scriptures, later translating them and spreading Buddhist teachings in China. Similarly, Nestorian Christianity and Manichaeism found their way into Central Asia and China, while Islam expanded eastward through trade and conquest, leaving a lasting imprint on the regions it reached. Art and architecture also flourished as a result of cross-cultural exchanges on the Silk Road. The blending of Hellenistic, Persian, Indian, and Chinese artistic styles gave rise to unique forms of expression. The Buddhist cave temples of Dunhuang, adorned with intricate murals and sculptures, reflect a synthesis of Indian and Chinese artistic traditions. Meanwhile, the influence of Persian and Central Asian motifs can be seen in Chinese textiles and ceramics, while Greek artistic techniques left their mark on the statuary of Gandhara in present-day Pakistan. These artistic interactions demonstrate how the Silk Road served as a conduit for creative innovation. Technological and scientific knowledge also flowed freely along the Silk Road. Papermaking, one of China's greatest inventions, spread westward, revolutionizing record-keeping and communication in the Islamic world and later in Europe. Similarly, advancements in astronomy, medicine, and mathematics were shared between civilizations. Arab scholars preserved and expanded upon Greek and Indian scientific works, which were later transmitted to Europe, laying the groundwork for the Renaissance. The exchange of agricultural techniques, such as new irrigation methods and crop cultivation, also transformed economies and diets across Eurasia. Language and literature were deeply influenced by these interactions as well. The translation of religious and philosophical texts fostered intellectual dialogue between cultures. Sanskrit Buddhist scriptures were translated into Chinese and Tibetan, while Persian and Arabic works were studied in Central Asia. The travels of scholars and diplomats, such as Marco Polo and Ibn Battuta, produced detailed accounts that expanded the geographical and cultural knowledge of distant lands. These writings not only documented the diversity of the Silk Road but also inspired future generations of explorers and thinkers. The Silk Road also facilitated the exchange of culinary traditions, introducing new flavors and ingredients across continents. Spices such as pepper, cinnamon, and cardamom traveled from South and Southeast Asia to the Middle East and Europe, transforming local cuisines. Noodles, believed to have originated in China, made their way westward, possibly influencing the development of pasta in the Mediterranean. Conversely, grapes and walnuts from Central Asia became staples in East Asian diets. This culinary interchange highlights how everyday life was enriched by the connectivity of the Silk Road. Despite its name, the Silk Road was not a single, well-defined path but rather a complex network of land and sea routes. Caravanserais, or roadside inns, provided shelter for merchants and travelers, becoming hubs of cultural interaction. Cities such as Samarkand, Kashgar, and Constantinople thrived as cosmopolitan centers where people of different ethnicities, religions, and languages coexisted and traded. The prosperity of these cities was a testament to the economic vitality of the Silk Road and its role in fostering multiculturalism. The decline of the Silk Road began with the rise of maritime trade in the 15th century, as European powers sought new sea routes to Asia. However, its legacy endured. The cultural exchanges it facilitated laid the foundations for the globalized world we know today. From the spread of religions to the blending of artistic styles, from the transmission of knowledge to the fusion of culinary traditions, the Silk Road was a bridge between civilizations, proving that even in ancient times, the world was more interconnected than it seemed. In modern times, the Silk Road has inspired initiatives such as China's Belt and Road Initiative, which seeks to revive economic and cultural ties across Eurasia. This reflects the enduring significance of the Silk Road as a symbol of exchange and cooperation. The story of the Silk Road is not merely one of trade but of humanity's shared heritage, demonstrating how the movement of people, goods, and ideas can shape history in profound and unexpected ways. The role of the Sogdians in maintaining Silk Road trade networks. The Sogdians were among the most influential merchant communities in the history of the Silk Road, acting as the primary facilitators of trade, cultural exchange, and diplomatic relations across Eurasia from antiquity through the early medieval period. Their strategic location in Central Asia, their linguistic and cultural adaptability, and their extensive commercial networks allowed them to dominate long-distance trade for centuries. The Sogdian cities of Samarkand, Bokhara, and Panjshir became thriving hubs where goods, ideas, and technologies converged, linking China, India, Persia, and the Mediterranean world. Geographical and historical context. Sogdiana, the homeland of the Sogdians, was situated in the fertile region between the Oxus, Amu Daria, and Jaxartes, Sir Daria, rivers, corresponding roughly to modern-day Uzbekistan and Tajikistan. This area was a crossroads of civilizations, bordered by the powerful empires of Persia, China, and the steppe nomads. The Sogdians emerged as key intermediaries due to their central position along the Silk Road, which enabled them to control crucial segments of the trade routes. From the 4th century BCE onward, Sogdiana was influenced by successive empires, including the Achaemenids, Alexander the Great's Hellenistic successors, and the Kushans. However, it was during the late antiquity and early medieval periods, roughly the 5th to 8th centuries CE, that the Sogdians reached the peak of their commercial and cultural influence. Unlike many other regions that were frequently conquered, the Sogdian city-states maintained a degree of autonomy by skillfully navigating the politics of larger empires, often serving as diplomats and translators in addition to merchants. Sogdian merchant networks and trade practices. The Sogdians were renowned for their sophisticated trade networks, which extended from China to Byzantium. They established diaspora communities in major trading cities such as Dunhuang, Chang'an, Xi'an, Turfan, and even as far west as Constantinople. These communities functioned as commercial outposts, where Sogdian merchants stored goods, negotiated deals, and relayed market information across vast distances. One of their most significant contributions was their role in the silk trade. While China was the primary producer of silk, the Sogdians acted as middlemen, transporting the precious fabric westward and exchanging it for silver, glass, wool, and other luxury goods. They also traded in spices, gemstones, metals, and slaves, creating a complex web of economic interdependence across Eurasia. The Sogdians were adept at navigating the legal and logistical challenges of cross-cultural trade. They developed advanced financial instruments, including letters of credit and promissory notes, which allowed them to conduct business without carrying large sums of currency. Their multilingualism was another key asset. Many Sogdians spoke Sogdian, an Eastern Iranian language, Persian, Chinese, and various Turkic dialects, making them indispensable interpreters and negotiators, cultural and religious mediators. Beyond commerce, the Sogdians played a crucial role in transmitting religions, art, and technology. As Buddhism spread from India to Central Asia and China, Sogdian merchants and monks facilitated its transmission by funding monasteries and translating scriptures. Similarly, Manichaeism, Zoroastrianism, and Nestorian Christianity found patrons among Sogdian communities, who carried these faiths along their trade routes. Artistically, Sogdian wall paintings and sculptures reveal a unique blend of Persian, Indian, Hellenistic, and Chinese influences. Their vibrant frescoes, found in sites like Panjakent and Afrasiab, depict scenes of courtly life, religious ceremonies, and caravan trade, illustrating their cosmopolitan worldview. Decline and legacy. The Sogdian Golden Age began to wane in the 8th century due to the Arab-Muslim conquests and the Anlushan rebellion in Tang, China, which disrupted Silk Road trade. Many Sogdians converted to Islam and gradually assimilated into the broader Persianate world. However, their legacy endured in the form of trade practices, linguistic influences, and cultural traditions that shaped subsequent Islamic and Mongol commerce. In conclusion, the Sogdians were the backbone of Silk Road trade, connecting distant civilizations through their unparalleled commercial expertise, cultural adaptability, and diplomatic acumen. Their story is a testament to the power of networks in shaping world history. How did Sogdian merchants become key intermediaries on the Silk Road? In a time long past, when caravans traversed vast deserts and towering mountains, covering great distances between east and west, a group of skilled merchants emerged as vital connectors of the ancient world. These were the Sogdians, the people of Sogdiana, a region located in what is now Uzbekistan and Tajikistan. Sogdiana itself was not rich in natural resources, but its strategic position in the heart of Central Asia made it a crucial hub along the Silk Road, that great trade network linking China with India, Persia, and the Mediterranean world. The Sogdians were a people of exceptional commercial talent, fluent in multiple languages and familiar with the cultures of various nations, making them ideal intermediaries between civilizations. They did not merely transport goods such as silk, spices, and jewels, they also carried ideas, religions, and arts. They mastered the art of negotiation and knew how to navigate dealings with different empires and kingdoms, from China to the Sasanian and Byzantine empires. Their cities, such as Samarkand and Bokhara, were thriving commercial centers where caravans from the east met those arriving from the west. The Sogdians built strong relationships with the great powers of their time, securing the protection of the empires through whose territories their trade passed. They also developed an early banking system, using letters of credit and checks, which facilitated long-distance transactions. Their role was not limited to trade, they became cultural bridges as well. Religions such as Zoroastrianism, Manichaeism, Nestorian Christianity, and later Islam spread through their trade networks. They also transmitted sciences and arts, playing a significant role in introducing Central Asian music and painting to China and the Islamic world. However, the glory of the Sogdians began to fade with shifting power dynamics in Central Asia. With the rise of Islam and changes in trade routes, their prominence gradually declined. Yet, their legacy remains a testament to the greatness of a people who, through skill and ingenuity, became the lifeblood of the Silk Road, transporting not just goods, but civilizations themselves. How did the Silk Road influence the spread of religions like Buddhism across Asia? The Silk Road, an ancient network of trade routes linking the East and West, served as a vital artery for cultural, economic, and religious exchanges between diverse civilizations. Among its most significant contributions was the facilitation of Buddhism's expansion from its origins in India to far-reaching corners of Asia. This process was neither swift nor linear but evolved over centuries, driven by the journeys of merchants, monks, and pilgrims who navigated these challenging routes. The narrative of Buddhism's propagation along the Silk Road is one of adaptation, synthesis, and lasting impact, profoundly shaping the spiritual fabric of the continent. Buddhism originated in the 6th century BCE in the northeastern regions of India, founded by Siddhartha Gautama, who became known as the Buddha. For several centuries, its influence remained largely confined to the Indian subcontinent, spreading through local missionary activities and royal support, particularly during the reign of Emperor Ashoka in the 3rd century BCE. However, the establishment of the Silk Road during the Han Dynasty, 206 BCE 220 CE, created the pathways necessary for Buddhism to reach Central Asia, China, and beyond. These trade routes, stretching from the Mediterranean to China, became channels not only for the exchange of goods like silk, spices, and precious metals but also for the flow of ideas, philosophies, and religious beliefs. The early spread of Buddhism along the Silk Road was closely linked to the Kushan Empire, 1st to 3rd century CE, which controlled critical segments of the route in Central Asia. The Kushans, especially under Emperor Kanishk, were strong supporters of Buddhism, promoting its growth through the construction of stupas, monasteries, and the patronage of scholarly monks. The region of Gandhara, in what is now Pakistan and Afghanistan, emerged as a key center for Buddhist art and scholarship, blending Hellenistic influences from Alexander the Great's legacy with Indian Buddhist traditions. The Gandharan artistic style, characterized by realistic depictions of the Buddha, played a crucial role in shaping the visual culture of Buddhism as it moved eastward. As traders and travelers journeyed along the Silk Road, Buddhist monks traveled with them, carrying sacred texts and teachings. These monks were not mere passengers but active missionaries, establishing monastic communities in oasis towns such as Khotan, Kutcha, and Dunhuang. These settlements became essential hubs for the dissemination of Buddhist thought, where scriptures were translated from Sanskrit into local languages like Sogdian and Kutchian. The Dunhuang caves, with their extensive collection of Buddhist manuscripts and wall paintings, serve as enduring evidence of this dynamic cultural exchange. The introduction of Buddhism into China was a slow and complex process, met with both skepticism and eventual acceptance. Initially viewed as a foreign doctrine, it gradually gained followers among both the Chinese elite and the general population. The translation of Buddhist texts into Chinese by scholars such as Kumarajiva in the 4th to 5th century CE was pivotal in making the teachings comprehensible to a wider audience. Later, Chinese pilgrims like Faxian and Xuanzang undertook perilous journeys to India to obtain authentic scriptures, further enriching the Buddhist tradition in East Asia. Beyond China, the Silk Road also enabled the transmission of Buddhism to Korea and Japan. Korean monks who traveled to China brought back Buddhist teachings, which were later introduced to Japan by the 6th century CE. In each of these regions, Buddhism adapted to local traditions, giving rise to distinct schools such as Zen in Japan and Pure Land Buddhism across East Asia. Although the Silk Road eventually declined in later centuries, its role in spreading Buddhism left an indelible legacy. The connections forged through these ancient trade routes ensured that Buddhism became a lasting spiritual force across Asia. More than just a conduit for commerce, the Silk Road acted as a bridge for religious and philosophical ideas, uniting distant lands and shaping the cultural and spiritual heritage of countless generations. Through the interplay of trade and faith, Buddhism transcended its origins, evolving into a universal tradition that continues to resonate today. The Silk Road served as a vital artery connecting the East and the West, not only in the exchange of goods and commodities but also in the transfer of ideas and technological innovations that reshaped civilizations. Among the most significant innovations introduced to Europe via this route was papermaking technology. The Chinese developed this technique in the 2nd century BCE, and by the 8th century CE, merchants and travelers carried it through Samarkand and Persia into the Islamic world before it finally reached Europe in the 12th century. This innovation had a profound impact on European culture, replacing parchment and papyrus, thus facilitating the spread of knowledge and affordable books. Similarly, woodblock printing, a precursor to modern printing, traveled from China to Europe via the Silk Road. Although Johannes Gutenberg is credited with inventing movable type printing in the 15th century, the basic concept of printing had already spread from the East. Additionally, designs for watermills and advanced irrigation systems, used in China and India, found their way to Europe through merchants traversing the Silk Road, contributing to improvements in agriculture and industrial production. The role of gunpowder cannot be overlooked, as it was one of the most influential innovations in European military history. The Chinese used it for fireworks and warfare since the 9th century, and the Mongols and traders later brought it to Europe in the 13th century, revolutionizing combat tactics and fortification construction. Mechanical clockmaking techniques, developed by Arabs and Chinese, also reached Europe via the Silk Road, paving the way for significant advancements in timekeeping and precision mechanics. Europe also witnessed the introduction of new textile technologies, such as advanced spinning machines and high-quality dyes brought by merchants from India and China. These innovations led to the flourishing of the textile industry in European cities like Florence and Venice. Furthermore, the Silk Road transmitted advanced medical techniques, including distillation methods used in perfumery and medicine, developed by scholars like Avicenna and Al-Razi. Before being adopted by European medical schools, many agricultural innovations, such as tree grafting techniques and improved crop varieties, traveled from Asia to Europe through this trade network. This helped increase agricultural productivity and diversify crops across the European continent. Additionally, Europe adopted advanced navigation technologies, such as the magnetic compass, developed by the Chinese and used by Arab sailors before reaching Europe in the 12th century, transforming maritime exploration. Thus, the Silk Road acted as a bridge for technological exchange between civilizations, enriching Europe with numerous innovations that laid the foundation for scientific and industrial progress in the medieval and modern eras. Cultural exchange along the Silk Road and its impact on art and literature. The Silk Road, an ancient network of trade routes connecting the East and West, was not merely a conduit for goods but also a vibrant channel for cultural exchange. For centuries, merchants, pilgrims, diplomats, and travelers traversed these routes, carrying with them not only silk, spices, and precious metals but also ideas, beliefs, and artistic traditions. This continuous interaction between diverse civilizations, including China, India, Persia, Central Asia, and the Mediterranean, profoundly influenced the development of art and literature across Eurasia. The fusion of styles, themes, and techniques that emerged from these exchanges left an indelible mark on the creative expressions of the societies along the Silk Road. One of the most visible impacts of this cultural interchange was in the realm of visual arts. Buddhist art, for instance, underwent significant transformations as it spread from India through Central Asia and into China. The Greco-Buddhist art of Gandhara, which blended Hellenistic artistic techniques with Buddhist iconography, is a striking example of this synthesis. The portrayal of the Buddha with realistic human features, draped in flowing robes reminiscent of Greek statues, was a departure from earlier aniconic representations in India. As Buddhism traveled further east, these artistic conventions were adapted by Central Asian and Chinese artisans, leading to the creation of distinct regional styles such as those seen in the cave temples of Dunhuang. Similarly, the transmission of Persian and Islamic artistic motifs into Central Asia and China introduced new decorative elements into painting, ceramics, and textiles. Floral patterns, arabesques, and intricate geometric designs became prominent in Chinese art during the Tang dynasty, reflecting the influence of Sasanian Persia and the broader Islamic world. Conversely, Chinese artistic techniques, particularly in porcelain and silk production, were highly sought after in the Islamic world and beyond, shaping the aesthetic sensibilities of distant regions. Literature, too, was deeply affected by the cross-cultural interactions along the Silk Road. The exchange of stories, fables, and philosophical ideas led to the enrichment of literary traditions across multiple languages. The tales of the Panchatantra, an ancient Indian collection of animal fables, traveled westward through Persian and Arabic translations, eventually influencing works such as Kalila wa Dimna and even reaching Europe, where they inspired medieval fabulists. Similarly, the 1001 Nights, a compilation of Middle Eastern and South Asian stories, incorporated narratives that had circulated along the trade routes, blending Persian, Indian, and Arab storytelling traditions. In Central Asia, the flourishing of Sufi poetry was another testament to the Silk Road's role in cultural diffusion. Poets like Rumi and Hafiz drew upon a rich tapestry of mystical ideas that had been shaped by interactions between Islamic, Buddhist, and Zoroastrian thought. Their works, composed in Persian, resonated across the region and beyond, illustrating how literary traditions transcended linguistic and geographical boundaries. Meanwhile, in East Asia, the introduction of Buddhist scriptures from India and Central Asia led to the development of new genres of religious and philosophical literature in China, Korea, and Japan. The Silk Road also facilitated the exchange of musical and theatrical traditions. The spread of instruments such as the lute and the pipa across Eurasia demonstrates how music evolved through cross-cultural borrowing. Dramatic performances, including Central Asian puppet shows and Chinese opera, incorporated narratives and styles that had been influenced by foreign traditions. In essence, the Silk Road was a dynamic crucible of creativity, where artistic and literary traditions were continually reshaped through contact and collaboration. The legacy of this exchange endures in the shared cultural heritage of the regions it connected, illustrating how movement and interaction have always been fundamental to human expression. The Silk Road was a vital artery connecting East and West, not only for trade goods but also for ideas, cultures, and sciences. Across thousands of miles, from China to the Mediterranean, merchants traveled with their caravans through barren deserts, rugged mountains, and thriving cities, carrying silk, spices, glass, and precious metals, along with something priceless, knowledge. But how did these merchants, belonging to diverse people speaking different languages, communicate and share ideas? Initially, communication relied on simple gestures and symbols. Merchants used hand movements and facial expressions to convey basic intentions, such as prices and quantities. However, as cultural interactions increased, the need for deeper understanding grew. This gave rise to lingua francas, or common trade languages. In Central Asia, for example, Sogdian became the merchant's language for centuries. Similarly, Persian played a crucial role in communication among Islamic, Indian, and Chinese communities. Spoken language was not the only means of communication. Merchants used writing to exchange messages and contracts, and inscriptions on coins and goods carried universally understood symbols. Major cities like Samarkand, Bokhara, and Kashgar became cultural hubs where traders learned new languages by mingling with locals. Perhaps the most important method for sharing ideas was translation. In cities like Baghdad, the capital of science and culture during the Abbasid era, translators worked diligently to render books from Greek and Persian into Arabic. These works later reached Europe through Al-Andalus, Islamic Spain. Similarly, Buddhism, Manichaeism, and Christianity spread along the Silk Road thanks to monks and merchants who translated religious texts into local languages. Beyond language, shared arts and symbols played a significant role in communication. The designs on ceramic ware, patterns in textiles, and even music served as nonverbal means of conveying ideas and beliefs. For instance, Buddhist art traveled from India to China along these routes without the need for words. Thus, language barriers did not hinder the exchange of ideas but instead spurred creativity and adaptation. Despite their linguistic differences, merchants built bridges of mutual understanding, transforming the Silk Road from a mere trade route into a bridge between civilizations.